Fantastic. So, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our Lunch and Learn session. Today, we're going to be looking at the basic, should we say, side of processing invoices. Obviously, we'll go through what we mean by the basic side of it as we go through the session. The sessions today are obviously designed to enable us to impart onto you news and information about all of the functionality within the system. And today we're excited to introduce Pratat Partnership as our Lunch and Learn sponsor. Pratat Partnership is a specialist recruitment firm focused on connecting companies with top-tier talent on either a permanent or interim basis at all levels in all departments, with a strong reputation for delivering a personal, relationship-led service. They work closely with employers and candidates to create long-term strategic matches. Their experienced consultants bring deep market insight and hands-on approach to every placement. By being part of the Compleat ecosystem, Pratat Partnership supports smarter, more strategic talent acquisition decisions, helping schools and organisations find talent with greater ease and confidence. So thank you ever so much to Pratat Partnership, and obviously we'll be talking a little bit more about the ecosystem through this presentation. So let's have a look at today's agenda. So we're going to be going through invoice processing basics. Now, what I mean by that is obviously there's quite a lot to do with the process of an invoice within the system. Ideally, we want it to be as quick and as streamlined as process. If there can be little to no user intervention, then so much the better. We ideally would like it so the invoices come in auto-matched, automatically sent off for approval, go out to the approvers, and then are automatically posted to the finance platform. But obviously there's some work that needs to be done in order for that to be able to happen. And I'll be going through some of those areas in this session. We are going to have another session which is booked for the July Lunch and Learn. So details about that will be coming out later. And that's where we'll just be building on the knowledge that we've gone through today and going through some of the more advanced functions on how to get invoices processing. But today what we're just going to concentrate is some of the views, areas on where we can recall information, etc., and some of the tips just to help kind of you in your day-to-day job. We'll obviously be doing that through a live demo. We'll then have a look at the Compleat ecosystem, and then we'll go through an opportunity for you to ask any questions. Hopefully I'll be able to provide the answers for them. So this is me. Darren, I am one of the software implementation consultants here at Compleat, and I'll obviously be running this session. I've probably spoken to some of you through one way or another in the past, so welcome, and to those who I haven't spoken to before, obviously welcome to you as well. Just some logistics as we go through the session. When you joined, obviously all of your mics are muted. If you could just leave them muted for the duration. We've got quite a few people on this one, and we don't really want to be talking over each other. You will find on the session there should be a Q&A box. So feel free to drop the questions into there. What I'll be doing is going through those at the end of this session. Depending on how many questions, we might have to curtail the session a bit, but we'll try and come back to all of you some way, shape or form. Obviously, we are recording this session as well, so you will receive an email with regards to this session. We're also keen to get feedback as well on how you found this session and any future sessions that you'd like to see coming as well. So there's a questionnaire that'll be coming out to you about that, and if you could fill that in and let us know, that'd be absolutely fantastic. So let's have a look at the session as the main. So first of all, just talking a little bit about the steps of invoice processing. So we've got the steps of invoice processing include. So this isn't an exhaustive list, but it will include areas like capture. So I'll have a little look at capture and some of the options around there. But at this stage, capture is the ability to it's basically where the invoices are being sent to via email, and they are then processed, and they will then have the data from that invoice extracted, and that data will then be sent along with a soft copy of the invoice to your iCompleat instance. So it's all to do with the processing of that invoice, getting that information to you, so you can then further process it, send it off for approval, etc., code the lines up, so on and so forth. When that invoice comes in, that falls into the unprocessed tray. So we'll be showing unprocessed tray and some of the different areas around the unprocessed tray that can be configured and things that might help with that. One of the areas that we would be looking to do when an invoice hits the unprocessed tray is what's called supplier mapping. And now some of you, and I'd imagine a lot of you, have probably already got this done for your suppliers, but you maybe don't appreciate that it has been done and what it's doing in the background. If we take the example that we've got a brand new supplier, first time we've used them, some of you may have found that when the invoice comes in, it's asking you to choose who that supplier is. I'll show you an example of that when we go through the demo, but if it comes up and it's asking you to choose who the supplier is, that's what's referred to as the supplier mapping. Now, the reason it's doing that is because in the capture database, we have our version of the supplier, but in your finance system, you'll have your version of the supplier. We basically just need to create a mapping between the two. So for example, we may have B&Q Limited. You may have just B&Q. We just need to map to say, yes, when you see B&Q Limited, that is B&Q. So that's the mapping. And then what we can do off the back of that is we can then apply defaults. So the next time an invoice comes in, we can tell the system, next time it comes in, you know who the supplier is. And in fact, what you can also do is you can apply this code to all lines, this account code to all lines, this VAT code, this department code, and that will allow the system to auto code. And as long as we have also stipulated in our defaults what the workflow is, that invoice can then come in, be auto coded, auto submitted, and you would never need to get involved with it. Only the people that it would be sent out to would be approving it, and then obviously automatically posting through to the finance system. So we'll go through those areas that need to be configured in order for that to happen, and we'll also go through some of the other bits and pieces as well. Not forgetting the matching. We're talking about matching as well. So the benefits of having all of that, as you can probably imagine, is faster data processing. It leads on to less user interaction, allowing you to concentrate on the areas where the system can't automatically code. So whether it's because it hasn't been taught through supplier defaults to automatically code, or whether it's because there's a problem with the invoice, all of those issues, if you like, will obviously make the invoice stay in that unprocessed tray. And the idea is it's just the invoices that the system can't deal with itself that are then left for user interaction. But if we can get to that sweet spot of having supplier defaults, etc., everything configured in turn, then that should allow for everything to go quite smoothly. It's also going to allow for quicker information recall as well. So getting to the information that we need, and I'll show you how we can kind of sort and change columns and everything in the grid view. And through some of the extra tools as well, like adding attachments and adding notes, we can keep all relevant information together on the transaction and make sure that we're keeping everything in one spot for people to be able to gain access to quickly. So let's move on to our demonstration. So I've got my test system here, demo site for consultants. As always say on these sessions, some of the tiles that you see here won't reflect the tiles that you necessarily have available to you. If you feel that you should have a tile and you haven't, then obviously speak to your admin user or log a ticket with the support desk. They'll be able to help with that. The first thing that we are going to look at is to do with the capture side, and obviously just show you a tool that is available to help you with this. And this is the invoices extracting. Now, for those of you who haven't got this tile, it's something that is going to be available through the user settings. So for the admin users who are on this call, if you were to go to configuration and then users, and then choose the user, it would be this option down here, access invoice processing will give you access to that tile. Now, what that tile does is that will show you what has and what is currently being processed through the capture system. So if I go into that tile now, it's going to tell me that I haven't got anything to, I've got no pending documents because I've currently got nothing for my demo system that's being processed through capture. However, using this filter here, if I change the filter to say processed, so anything that has already been processed, click on filter, you can see here, this is everything that has been processed through the capture system. So we've got standard page controls that allow us to search through the pages. We've got a filter here on date received. But if we had an invoice or a credit note that was currently being dealt with by capture, would have a status of processing, and we'd be able to see the process status. So whether it was something that OCR was currently looking at, or whether it's something that had been referred for a member of the team to interact with, you'll be able to see whereabouts it is in the system. It will give you a date received and the target extraction date. So by default, it is a service level agreement of 24 hours. However, the majority of them are done a lot quicker. And in fact, if I scroll over to the far right, you can see the actual export created here. So it came in on the 30th of December 24 at 11:41 a.m. and it was exported to iCompleat 3 minutes later at 11:44. So a lot quicker. So you'll be able to, as I said, use this to gauge what's currently coming through. You do have these options here to be able to view the attachments. So we can view the attachment like so. And if we wanted to as well, we could download the attachment as well. So that is the invoice processing, the invoices extracting side of things. And as I said, if that tile is going to be of use for you and isn't available, then that access is provided through the admin and config side. So if we go into the invoices grid, so go to the invoices module, takes us to the invoices grid. Let's have a look at some of the tools that we have and functions that we have around here that can help us. So first off, obviously the invoices module is split out into a series of tabs. So the unprocessed and the submitted tray, this is typically access that's given to the AP operators where they can see everything that the system cannot process itself, whether that's because it hasn't been taught to or it hasn't been able to because of a problem on the invoice. It will sit in the unprocessed tray. Anything that's been submitted will obviously go out and sit in the submitted tray, but will also show in the awaiting approval tray of the approver who is lined up to approve it. We've then got anything that has been approved, anything that's been denied, deleted, and if any posting failures. So by posting failures, we mean anything that hasn't been able to post out to the finance platform for whatever reason. I'll just go back to my unprocessed tray. So looking at the grid, obviously we've got various columns here. So the date the invoice was received, invoice date, payment date, etc. We've got a company here for column. No, we haven't. We have a column here for company. And what we can see here is we've got demo site. If I hover up at the top here, I can expand that column just by using that line. And I can scroll down. I can see I've got demo site for consultants. Up here is where I could apply a filter to filter down exactly what I am seeing in this grid. So They look like they're all from the same company at the moment. I did put some others in there, but they seem to have been processed by someone else in the team, but never mind. But what we can do here is if you've got multiple companies within iCompleat, you can filter and choose which records it is you want to see. So if I change this to be custom reports demo, you can see it's populated that into there, and I've got no records, no results. I can remove that. I can filter by the demo site for consultants, and it's brought those all through. So that's a handy filter tool there if you want to concentrate on just the one company. For some sites, you may have just the one company, but you may find that it's showing a company column here. So you can add and remove all of the columns if you want to, and that's done by clicking on these 3-dot assist buttons located just at the top here. So if I click onto that and then go to columns, you can see this is giving me a list of all the columns that have currently been selected, and I can simply go through and remove the tick or add the tick to any that I would like to see. So a new one that came in recently was layout. So if I tick onto that, you can see the layout that the transaction was or is using. If we didn't want to see layout, obviously we would simply remove the layout. And if we didn't want to see company, we would remove company. You can see the grid is reacting to the options that I'm making, and it just helps to kind of clear out any information that you don't particularly need to see and just give you better visibility of what you do. We've also got from this option sorting. We can achieve sorting as well by just clicking on the column header. So if I click onto supply, you can see it's put an arrow upwards. If I then click on supplier reference, it's now sorting by supplier and by supplier reference. Now, one of the areas that regularly comes up is we find that users are clicking on the sorting, but it's not sorting exactly how they would expect. The key behind it is because of these arrows. You'll find, well, in fact, you'll see I've got supplier with an upward arrow, supplier reference, upward arrow indicating sorting. If I then go to invoice number as well, you can see that the invoice numbers are not sorting how I necessarily or how I think they should, because it's still sorting by supplier and still sorting by supplier reference. If we toggle through these until it's removed, then we'll find that invoice is now in that numerical order. So that's something to watch out for if you are sorting. If you do find that it's not quite giving you the sorting order that you're expecting, it might be because you've still left a sort on a previous column. As we are looking at this grid and we hover over the lines, we can see that we are presented with this little icon here. What this does, this will bring up two functions. One is to add a note, and the other one is to delete. Delete, quite simple. That would delete this copy of the invoice. Now, only AP operators will have the ability to do this, and obviously it's recommended that you review into the invoice first to make sure it does need to be deleted, but that delete option is there. And what that will do is it will move it to the deleted tray. So I can do that on this invoice now. Delete, it will ask you for a reason. We could say duplicate, for example. Could even spell it correctly, that would help. Click on delete, and that has now moved that invoice to the deleted tray. Anything that's in the deleted tray, if it's been deleted accidentally, you can bring it back to the unprocessed. So we'd go into the invoice from the deleted tray. We would go to actions, and from actions, there's a restore. And what that will do is that will move it back from deleted to unprocessed. The other function from this hover menu here was add a note. And what that will do, that will bring up a notepad for us. And let's say, for example, that the invoice has come in, but there's a query on it. We're not quite sure on the pricing. We can literally just add that note in here. Holding and checking on pricing with Bob. We can add an icon. So For example, let's give it a phone because we are putting a call through to somebody. We'll give it a nice red color and add our icon, and then simply click on add note. And what that will do is that will create a timeline. So it's going to keep the user who created the note with their little icon they selected. It's going to date, stamp and time when the note was created, what the note is. And that's also giving me the ability to delete it if I want to, or if not, I can just carry on adding a new note here. What that will do is on the grid view is it will add a note or an indication into here. So you can see if I'm hovering over here, we've got no notes. If I just refresh that screen, you can see, and incidentally refreshing the screen, I'll just move to another tab and back again. You can see I've now got a note sitting against that invoice here. So it's giving me the first few characters. And if I click onto there, it'll bring that note back up for me. Add any further notes, etc. So a handy tip to be able to, again, make sure that keeping all the information together. If one person's dealing with an invoice, they go on holiday, their colleague comes along and thinks, what's this sitting here? Why isn't it being processed? At least there's a note here that they can review. If we go into this invoice, let's have a look at some of the options around here. So we've got things like these icons here, which are to look out for. So these are indicating that information is missing from the line. And if I hover over here, you can see that it is requesting that I give it, oops, get that back again. Area requires a value to be set. And if I look at the line, I can see the area, which is one of my analysis codes on my system, that is blank. So we need to provide area. And if you find that it's got these exclamation marks on the lines, you won't be able to actually submit it out for approval because that is classed as an error. The other glaringly obvious one that we have right at the top here is this red banner. And again, this will indicate or draw your attention to any areas where the system is unable to process. And what it's saying here is requires validation review. We've detected a difference between the original header totals and the calculated totals on your invoice. And you can see that is indicated here. We've got a little red triangle. Now we can have a look at the invoice by clicking on this show invoice tab or tag that is sitting just at the left-hand corner here. We can zoom across, we can have a look at the invoice, and yeah, I can see that the net VAT and gross values that the system has calculated don't add up to the values that the supplier has provided on their invoice. Now, this is obviously a on purpose demonstration that I've put into here, but it does obviously happen where the suppliers are sending their invoices through and there's been a rounding difference on VAT, for example. And so what the system is telling us is it's just drawing our attention to say, well, the supplier is giving us these totals, but when I run the figures, I come up with these totals. What would you like me to do? We can simply click on that header bar onto that red bar at the top, and that's going to give us this review totals difference option. So we can see that the issue is a little bit bigger than we originally thought. It's telling me that it's expecting a net total of £1,110, which seems to be fine, but the VAT total is out by £21.99, which is then throwing the gross total out by £21.99. Underneath, it's giving me these options. I can auto correct, and what that will do is it will put that £21.99 to a line of my choosing. I can accept the difference, which will just say, yep, no, I'm fine. Send these values through to the finance system, or I can manually go in and correct the totals. Now, I'm not sure why it's coming up with £21.99. I mean, I know, but but let's pretend I don't know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use manually correct, and that's going to take me back to this view where I can then have a look and see what's going on. So it to me stands out that perhaps it's the tax code. It's put the tax code standard rate. If we have a look at the invoice, we can see that these two lines are 0 rate. So that's where part of the problem has come in. And oops, went a little bit too far. What I'm going to do is go back into the invoice, and I'm going to remove that difference, which is what I've done here. And you can see that it is, oh no, that's a different invoice, isn't it? Let's get that same invoice back up. Oops. This is where keeping a copy of the invoice number would be handy. There we go. So invoice number 27. So what I'm going to do is on the tax code, I need to change this to be 0 rated. Now I can go through each line individually, or what I can do is go to this quick actions. I can select tax code and I can tell it for this line and this line, I want the tax code to be 0, apply, and you can see it's automatically applied that for me. So that quick actions is available for any field that requires population. If I click on to quick actions, you'll see that there is area, and area is blank here. And in fact, on these exclamation marks, it's telling me area needs to be set. So I can use quick actions to set area as well if I want to. So let's tick all of the lines, choose the area code, click apply, and that has coded area for me as well. If we then have a look, we've still got these exclamation marks. Click back up to here, and we can see that, yep, we're now out by 1 penny. And I am going to tell the system that I want to accept the difference. I'm happy with that 1 penny difference. Or if I went for autocorrect, it will ask me where do we want to apply that additional 1 penny to. Let's put it onto this line here. You can see that it's added that value in, and I've no longer got an error telling me about the totals. You can see there's no red exclamation mark against the totals, but what it is doing is it's saying requires validation, account owner requires a value to be set. So this is on the header. And again, all of these messages are all designed to help you navigate through and to easily identify the missing information. So in my configuration, account owner is a mandatory field and must be provided at header level. If I click onto that red bar at the top, it's going to take me to the screen where I can set the account owner. Let's just do that. There we go. Save, job done. We're now looking at an invoice where we've got no red exclamation marks, no red banners, no red triangles. Everything is all fine and happy. We would now be able to process that invoice through by submitting it to a workflow, and then obviously it can go off on its approval. Before we submit it though, what we can do is if I go to the edit screen, I will have this option here for apply defaults. Now, if you remember at the beginning, I was saying about the process. So if you're onboarding a new supplier, the invoice comes in and we need to map that supplier. When that happens, typically what we would see is this message here. So I've gone into a different invoice. It's saying requires validation review, supplier requires mapping and one more. Obviously that one more is this exclamation mark down here. So these kind of are the key areas you need to look for. If I click on to the red banner, it's going to take me to this section here, and this is where it's asking me for the supplier. Now, the reason it's asking is because it's either a supplier who hasn't had an invoice processed through the system before, or it's because no mapping has been set up, or the mapping could have been broken, and breaking the mapping is one of the things we'll be going through on our next session. But what I need to do here is I need to tell it who the supplier is, and in typical demo situations, I don't have that supplier in my database. Let's pretend Teco Drive is my supplier. What we'd then be doing is clicking on apply defaults, and it brings this window up for me where it's then asking us the next time the invoice comes in from this particular supplier, do we want to preset the account code, currency code, so on and so forth. And we can do as much or as little as we want to on this. The ones I would recommend is if you know the workflow that it would typically be going down, then set the workflow. But do be assured that, or reassured that it's not going to go to that workflow unless it's happy that it's got all the information it requires. So if it's, in this example, we haven't given it a preset of a tax code. So if it failed because it didn't have a tax code, that would cause it to sit in the unprocessed tray and it would be asking for a tax code. It would already have the account code preset, currency code preset, but it would be asking for a tax code. As we've seen in a previous invoice, we know that the account owner is mandatory, so it would also be asking for an account owner as well. But if we had gone through and set everything like so, then as long as what we've preset doesn't cause any problems, so for example, as long as all the lines on the invoice are standard rate, then it can happily go and apply everything. Everything will balance, it will be coded, it will automatically submit down to the workflow. So this is one of the key areas on how to really get the automation working for you, is to populate these supply defaults so that you're teaching the system the next time the invoice comes in, do this, and it will then carry through without any issues. The only time theoretically you should be seeing something in the unprocessed tray is where it's applied the defaults, but it's contradicting the details on the invoice. For example, all the lines are being coded as tax rate standard, but in fact there's 2 lines on there that need to be 0, in which case you can use the quick actions, switch them to 0, submit it on its merry way. Or if there's an imbalance on the invoice or some other issue that's stopping it from being able to auto submit. But again, that apply defaults is available through the edit button when within the invoice, applying defaults, populate it, click save, and those defaults will then apply. Obviously, you can change the defaults as well if you want to, and that's just by coming into the apply defaults screen. And again, from actions, you can just go straight to apply defaults here, and that would apply any defaults that you've set. And again, you've also got delete through here. You've got the notes through here, and then we've got matching info through here as well. Obviously, there are some others, but we'll cover those in the second session. So just before we finish up here, just to show you the matching side. If I hover over the line here, you can see that as well as this little icon, we've got a grid icon sitting here. And if we review this invoice here, we can see that it's bringing up this window. Now, this is what you'd be doing if you were looking to manually match. Ordinarily, what the system will be doing is, as long as it's extracted the correct order number from the invoice, it will be looking for that order within the system. If it can't find the order, so for example, you can see I've got this order number incorrect, it should be 5 zeros and then a 1. That would also cause it to sit in the unprocessed tray. And what will you be able to do is come in and either perform matching, but it's still going to look for the old order reference number, or you can find a PO, and that will go and find any purchase orders that it has currently sitting there awaiting to be processed. But again, from here, click onto that, doing it all wrong, click onto that reference and it's find a PO here. That will allow you to manually match. You can also do that through actions and through this matching info here, where you've got find a PO as well. But obviously, we'll go into how to do the matching and how to deal with variances, etc., in our next session. So hopefully that's given you a few tips on different pieces of functionality available within the system. Just before we jump into the questions, just wanted to quickly mention about the Compleat ecosystem. So it's our own built-in supply network that connects businesses with trusted providers across a huge range of industries. So whether you're looking for office supplies, financial solutions, or specialist services, the ecosystem makes it seamless to find, connect with, and buy from the best suppliers without all the usual hassle. And what you see here is just a small selection of the many suppliers that we have on our platform. And obviously there's our kind sponsors for today's session, Pratt Partnership. So I appreciate there's quite a lot to go through in that session, but I will try and find my questions window and happily answer any questions. So let's have a look. Obviously, we appreciate I've gone on a little bit, quite a bit to go through. So we'll go through as many questions as we can. So first question I've got here is, what do you do if the invoice capture picks up the wrong invoice details? We've had a supplier change the format of their invoices and the system now doesn't pick up the invoice details correctly. That's a brilliant question. And this does happen quite often. It goes back to the capture side of things. So capture is obviously programmed to look for certain information, and what it does is it builds a template, and that template is basically saying the address is here, and then it will read the address, validate all of the information. It will then say the lines are here, etc. If the supplier has changed the template, the format rather of the invoice, all you need to do is, if you just log a support ticket, tell them who the supplier is, and if you can also give them the invoice reference as well, that it was logged in on iCompleat as well, just in case they need to go and have a look at it, but ask them to redo the template because it's now no longer picking up whichever field it is. Similar thing happens with order numbers as well. Some suppliers like to move the order numbers about, and they are, again, it's the template issue that if you ask the support team just to review that template, then that will they'll get amended for you. Whilst there are certain things that can be done within the system by yourself, again, we like to hear back from you. We don't expect you to have to keep changing every single time. So if it's always a case of, oh, it never picks up the order number, I have to put the order number in myself, tell us, let us automate that for you, and we can get that sorted from a capture side. Another question we've got here, how long does the invoice take to appear in the invoices extracting once emailed? Our invoices extracting list is blank. Okay, so first thing to do is, if you toggle the filter to say processed, just make sure you're getting the results in there. I have occasionally found, because of the nature of SaaS software over the internet, sometimes a simple close the tab for the invoices extracting and then reopening it again, that can sometimes help it to refresh itself. But if you do find that the screen still isn't showing the information, again, if you just log a support ticket on that, that will hopefully get resolved for you quickly. Okay, so just going through some of the other questions that I've got here. Oops, lost them. Let's just have a look, see if we've got any going in the chat. No, can't see any there. Obviously, others that have come up in the past is, it's mainly things like templates. Another one that comes up as well with regards to invoice processing is if the totals that come through are incorrect. It is sometimes something that you can do yourself, either through reviewing those totals, or it might be something that simply just needs the invoice reprocessing. So for example, if Capture has picked up the wrong totals from the invoice, that would need to be reprocessed, because obviously that's going to be something that you won't be able to correct through the system. And again, logging a support ticket, ask them to reprocess that invoice. They will happily do that for you. I can see got some questions coming through in the chat as well. So so regarding invoicing extracting, would you be able to add more search filters? That's something we can certainly do. We're always keen to learn of new features that you would like. And if there is something in the system that you would like it to do, then please, by all means, please do tell us. No guarantee it will happen, but we are always keen to learn of your experiences, what's working for you, what isn't working for you, and obviously improve the experience for you. Just reading through clients, accounts, company. So change mentioned so far, changed by our accounts company. How many their clients changed our IOP account? So reading a question here, I think it's to do with the changing of the config. And yeah, that would need to be done by the partner, the changing of the config on there. Hope my answer makes sense to the question. Got another one here. Can we correct the header? Again, that's one of those situations that would need to be a invoice reprocessed by the Capture team, and they'll normally get that through incredibly quickly for you. With the default mappings, is there any way we can stop going through without a description? So I'm assuming that the description on the line, unfortunately not through the supplier defaults. I'm wondering if it's possibly something done through the event, which is a previous lunch and learn that we did. It would need to be looked into. But if you wanted to look into the event, that's a session that's available on the support site on the lunch and learn page. Obviously, any questions, do get in touch. How do you add new account codes? That's a good question. It all depends on the way that iCompleat's be configured. So in a nutshell, we've got two different ways of integrating. There's what we call the universal connector, which is where the information in the system is input manually. To be fair, there's very few and far customers with that setup. The majority of the customers have the connector version, which is connected to a finance platform. And if that's the case, which I imagine it is, hopefully it is, you would simply just need to create that account code in the finance platform, and then that will cache through into iCompleat automatically. Now, that cache function will run on a nightly basis, but your admin users will have been or should have been shown how to run that cache manually to get that account code come through immediately. But if they don't do that, it will be available the next day. We've got a notification somebody's on a basic Teams plan. That's good to know. So when we send an invoice to Compleat, we can see the pending invoices to reflect in unprocessed. With the changes with the portal, it's not available anymore. Is this moved to somewhere? So before we send an invoice to Compleat, we can see the pending invoices to reflect. Oh, I see. Right. Yes. Yeah. So that is now the invoice is extracting. So yeah, it used to be a banner telling you that there were a number of invoices being processed. That's all been moved now to the invoices extracting tile, where you can see what's currently going through and also what status it's in. The beauty of that now is that it also gives you that preview function as well. And if you needed to process it immediately, you could just download it straight from there, manually key it into the finance platform, and follow up in iCompleat later. What is the normal time it should take between emailing the invoice to iCompleat until having it sit in the unprocessed tray? So yeah, it all depends on the number of factors, the number of invoices being sent in, the quality of the invoices as well. Again, there's a capture lunch and learn session that we did. Feel free to have a watch of that one. But as long as the PDF, as long as the invoice is sent in a PDF format, as long as it's a good format, that it's a supplier that is known and there's a template in place for it. As you saw, theoretically, it could just be a couple of minutes, if not seconds, but we tend to say everything will be processed typically within a few hours, but there is that absolute worst case scenario of 24 hours in the SLAs. We would like if the system took POS receipts rather than require an Excel sheet to be filled in. Yep, no, that's a good request. What I'd suggest with that one is if you log that as support, just with some supporting information and examples of what you'd like to process, that can obviously then be looked into, processed further. Is I to be able to process credit notes? Yes. So within the system, it has the concept of layouts, and each layout will have a each invoice transaction type. I'm trying to do too many things at once. Each transaction type will have a layout, and there'll be one for invoices, one for credit notes. So yes, the system can process credit notes. If you haven't got a credit note layout, then do let support know, and they'll be able to help you out with that. The way you can have a look is if you go into an invoice, and if you go to actions and you go to transfer, this option here, you should see layout for credit notes. You can see I don't have a layout for credit notes in my system, but it would be here that you would see it. So that would tell you that yes, you do have the layout. When the invoice, or rather credit note, comes in, if it is applied to the invoices layout incorrectly, this is the function. So this actions transfer, this is where you'd be able to tell it to use the credit note layout instead, but it should come through automatically. But that's obviously something that we're going to go into further detail as well on the next session as well. So, so do we have to change the transaction type first to get the layout? No. So ordinarily, the system will, if it's an invoice, will apply it to the invoice layout automatically. If it's a credit note, apply it to the credit note layout automatically. All I was doing here is, if it does sometimes happen where a credit note comes in, and if the supplier hasn't clearly stated on the document that it's a credit note, it may apply to the invoice layout automatically, in which case this is the function you can use to transfer it. But where I started with this transfer was just in response to that previous question, is the system able to process credit notes? Yes, it is. There's a separate layout for it. The quick way to see if you have a credit note layout is to go to that transfer function and see if it says credit notes in there. If it doesn't, if you log a support ticket, they'll be able to help you get one created. So just conscious of time, I hope I've gone through and answered all that I can. I think a quick review, we've done most of them. Obviously, apologies if I haven't managed to get around to you. If there is anything that you would like an answer on, then please do feel free to contact us. The contact details. So we have our customer success team who are available on success@compleatsoftware.com, or you can connect with us with LinkedIn. As I said, we're going to be sending out an email with a short survey. Would be really keen to get feedback on how you found the session, anything that you would like to see more of, anything that you got what you got the most out of from this session, but also any upcoming sessions, what you would like to see. We've got loads and loads that we can love to, well, we are going to run the sessions for, and would love to show you, but obviously we would like them to be as meaningful and purposeful for yourselves as possible. So do let us know what you would like to see. The next session is going to be on the 16th of July, and invitations are going to be sent out, and that's going to be the advanced tools and tricks to take your invoices from inbox to approval. So we'll be going over again, just to recap some of the areas that we've covered today, but then looking at things like adding lines, adjusting the invoices through that process, and things to look out for, and delve deeper into invoice matching, etc. on that next session. So look out for those invites coming through. You are more than welcome. And just before you go, we like to obviously keep everyone abreast of changes and things, and some of the recent support tickets that have come out, there have been changes to, or upgrades made available to finance platforms. So whether it's any of the ones listed here, kind of Sage, QuickBooks, AIQ, etc. What we would recommend is, before you jump into an upgrade, just give us a shout, just to check that the version of the connector you're on will be compatible with the version of the accounting platform that you're going to. Chances are that it is, but better safe than sorry, just to check with us, and that will save